Hello. For this video, we're going to do an introduction of Fusion 360 by jumping right into it and laying out this sort of brown piece that I have in my classroom. I looked on the piece and it said the word clamp on it, so that's why I called it clamp here. In class, we might also just call it brown because it comes in a box with a bunch of different shapes and they're all different colors. So I also will sometimes refer to this as brown. So hopefully, after learning how to draft by hand, we know how to read a drawing like this. And we're going to use this drawing to make that part in Fusion 360. Now, in Fusion 360, it's quite a bit different from AutoCAD, which we learned first. So if you're watching this video because you're in my class, then just know that things are going to be quite a bit different the way that we draw things. The way we draw things in AutoCAD is direct modeling, meaning that when you lay out a line, when you make that line, you're going to give it a length, and that's going to be that line's length. And you really can't change it unless you delete it or you scale it or you do something to it. In Fusion 360, we draw in a completely different way, a way that's becoming more and more popular in the engineering world for computer drafting, right, or CAD. And that is called parametric modeling, where parametric modeling, you lay out your basic shape first, and you don't really worry about the dimensions. And then you use dimensions and constraints and relationships to define how big or what the shape is, right? So when we design for this part, we're going to keep that in mind. We're not super concerned with the dimensions as we draw. Instead, what we're going to do is just lay out the basic shape. So the first thing we're going to do is find the Create a Sketch tool, which is right over here on the top corner. And it is the first tool in the ribbon. So it's pretty easy to find. Plus it's got the big green check mark. So because now we're designing in three-dimensional space, in AutoCAD, we just start sketching. But in Fusion, we need to define a plane because now we have 3 dimensions. So we can sketch, instead of one gigantic 2-dimensional plane with just X and Y, now we have an infinite number of planes that exist on an X, Y, and Z grid. So we have to say where we're going to start doing our first sketch. Well, since we're going to use the front view as our first drawing, our first sketch, we should sketch on the front plane here. So I'm going to click front on the view cube. So I clicked that word, and now we're snapped. Instead of a 3D isometric view, when I click front, we're looking at a 2D orthographic view, which just means that I can now, if I click on this square right here, I know that I'm sketching on the front plane, right? Which means that this line is Z and this line is X. And this is the front view right here, which we can see by looking at the view cube. Now that we're going to sketch, we're going to make sure that we change our document settings over from millimeters, the units, to inches. So we do that just by clicking on, let me change this to inches first. There we go. So we're going to change this by clicking on this white arrow to make it black so that the units pop up, which is right here. And when I hover my mouse over the units, there's going to be a little notepad that pops up right here. When you click on that notepad, you're going to get this window here. And we just changed the unit type from millimeter over to inch because this drawing is done in inches. With that set, we're just going to go ahead and click OK. The other white arrow that I'm going to open up is this one over here by sketches. So I made this arrow, I clicked this white arrow and made it black so that I could see my sketches folder. And the reason why that's important is because we're going to be looking for this red padlock on that sketch. That red padlock just means that that drawing is fully constrained, because with parametric modeling, that's what we're looking for. We always want to make sure that our sketches are constrained, which means that they're fully defined. they've got all the dimensions, they've got all the constraints, they've got everything that they need to allow us to finish drawing. So we're going to go ahead. Like I said before, we're going to look at this drawing to get our basic shape. So I'm not even going to look at the dimensions yet. What I'm going to do instead is I am going to lay out this basic shape. So going left, going up, I'm sorry, going right, going up, going right, going up, going left, down, left, just like that. I'm going to start on origin because then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror this, if you remember from AutoCAD, the mirror tool, so that this just goes ahead and does the same thing on this side, which of course means I can be lazy and only model half this, which is good. All right, so let me go ahead and do that now. So I'm in my sketch. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and go to the line tool. That's the first tool in this ribbon, because we're on a different tab now. Before we were on the solid tab where we had the create sketch, but we're on a different tab now, which is the sketch tab. In the sketch tab, I'm going to click on the line tool, start on the origin, and go just like I was before. Right, up, left, down, and I'm going to end at the same spot that I did where I started. And I'm going to click this green check to finish. This is my basic shape. So notice that the bottom line here is black because I can't move it up and down. I could still move it left and right. But the reason why it's black is because Fusion 360 doesn't really consider this line to be changing, even though of course its length is changing. It's more of figuring you're moving this line, right? So that could be confusing for a few people because they'll see that the lines are turning black, which means they're defined, but you could still move them. It's a little weird to understand at first, but don't worry. It'll come with experience. So the rest of the lines are blue, and we need to get our red padlock back, right? Remember we had a red padlock? Now we have a pencil. We want that pencil to go away. And the way to get that pencil to go away is to start dimensioning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Fusion 360 and I'm going to snap it to one side of the screen. I'm going to take my drawing. I'm going to snap it to the right side of my screen so that I can start working on this and I can look at my drawing, my draft here to get to work. So now this is where the dimension tool comes in. Just like in AutoCAD, we were able to dimension using the dimension tool. But when we were using the dimension tool in AutoCAD, what we were doing was we were just like asking. We were asking AutoCAD, how long did I make this line? It was just for visual sake to show what we were to show in the draft how big things were, right? In Fusion 360, this dimension tool is actually defining how long these lines are, right? So let's start with this one up top. I see that it's 1 3/8 here on my draft. So I'm going to click on it and do 1 space 3/8, just like that. 1 3/8. I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and that's set that to, and it automatically converts it to decimal for you. So if you didn't know that 1 3/8 was 1.375, well, you do now. All right. I'm going to work my way down into the right. So now I have 7/8, just going to be right here. Down here is also 7/8. It doesn't say what this is, but because I know the entire height, I can actually click this line and this line to go ahead and make that 2. So now we're getting somewhere. The tiny little gap between here and here, this little tiny one is 1/8, 1/8. This line here is 5/8, 5/8. All right. And now I don't have on this paper from here to here. So I'm gonna have to figure out what that is because I forgot that on this on this draft, but I will find out in a moment. But for now, what I can do is I can just go ahead and flip this with the mirror tool. So what I'm gonna do is one more line, except now with the line tool open, I'm gonna turn on construction, meaning that this isn't a real line, it's just a line that helps me make this piece. So with this construction button turned blue, I can draw a line just like that. And now with that set, I can use my mirror tool. Mirror tool is right here on the ribbon, almost looks a little bit like a paper airplane. You can see it's like a black triangle and then the blue triangle is mirrored. When the mirror tool pops up, it asks me to select my objects first. So I'm just going to go ahead and select everything. And then it asks for the mirror line. So I'm going to click select there and select the dotted line, the construction line that I made. With that done, I can go ahead and click OK. So now because I don't have that last, oh, well, I do have an overall width here, which is 2 3/4. So I can do that now. I'm going to go ahead and go from, oh, not that one, sorry. 2 3/4, 4 5/8 for the entire width. So from here all the way to here, it's going to be 4 5/8, just like that. So now the only thing that's not defined is just the height for this. And the width of that. Let me go ahead and, one thing I'm noticing is that I never defined this line here to be perpendicular. Notice how it must have been slightly off when I was drawing each of these. Look at how all the corners have perpendicular constraints there. Whoops. So how am I going to do that? Well, this is a good time to talk about constraints. Constraints lock in our drawing not with dimensions, so not with numbers, but with relationships to other lines. So like, for example, if one line is perpendicular to another, we know that that's just 90 degrees. We don't really need a number for that. And then we also have here coincident. That just means that 2 points are touching. This is horizontal and vertical, this one, so that we know that those lines are straight up and down or straight left and right. So I'm going to go ahead and make this line perpendicular to this line. So I'll select this, click on the perpendicular constraint tool, and select this line. And now we know that those are perfectly perpendicular. And because the mirror tool was already done, I actually don't have to do that on this side. Anything I do to the right side is also going to happen on the left. All right, so now the only thing I have to do is set the height of how far this line is from the bottom. And because I don't have that on my drawing, I got to sneak over to where I made it and go ahead and open that up so I can cheat a little bit. Take a look at this. So I'm going to open this up where I've opened it before, which is right here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up that now. And I'm going to open it up in here so I could save it in here, because that's going to be right from here to here. Whoop. There you go. And apparently it is 7/8. And I'm going to save that right now so I can print this out for the class for when you guys do this tomorrow. Well, when you look at it, it'll be today, of course, but I'm recording this a day early. All right. Wonderful. I already forgot the number. 7/8. There we go. So now I'm going to go ahead and use the dimension tool to go from there to there. 7/8. Enter. That's that line to that line. 7/8. Now you'll notice that I got my red padlock done on sketch 1. Wonderful. I can click finish sketch here, where it says the sketch palette, or I could click finish sketch up here with the big green dot that says finish sketch up here on the ribbon. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And now I'm going to click on the view cube, this little home button right here. That home button is set to an isometric view, which is useful because this is not going to be a 2D sketch for much longer now. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to extrude this and make it 3D. So I'm going to click the extrude tool. That's the second button on the ribbon there. And I'm going to make it its total width, which is 2 3/4. So in this box here, I'm just going to type 2 3/4. 2 3/4. 2 3/4. And press OK. Awesome. So that's looking pretty good. The only thing it's missing, of course, is these little cutouts on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and sketch those in now. And to do that, I'm going to click on one side. I could do this on this side, or I could do it on this side. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go ahead and do it on the right. Create another sketch here. And I need to make a box. I need to make a rectangle, right? Technically a square, right? That is 3/4 by 3/4. And I'm going to take this box and move it. I'm just going to pull it over here. And I'm going to snap the center of this line here to the center of this line here. And I'm going to do that using the midpoint constraint. So notice this little triangle here. I'm going to click on that triangle, this midpoint constraint triangle. Click on the right side of that blue box that I just made, and click on the right side of the piece. As soon as I do that, it snaps right to it. I'm going to do another construction line here. So I'm going to create a line in the sketch palette here, turn construction on. I'm going to go from the origin all the way up to the top of the piece. And you'll notice that this isn't really clicking on here, and that's fine. Click the green line to set that. All right, and now I can use that as a mirror line for this box here. So I'm going to click mirror. I'm going to click on the 4 lines that I made, 1, 2, 3, 4. For mirror line, select my construction line and click OK. And that mirrored that over. Now we don't have our red padlock because this guy doesn't know how tall to be, but I think I can make this coincident with this, or maybe this. There we go. So if you didn't see what I just did there, because I clicked a couple things. Coincident, I used the line here and the end point of this construction line and made those two coincident with each other. Which basically just means that if this line were to go forever, it would also touch the end of that line, which certainly it does. And coincident was just the constraint tool here. It's the second one on the ribbon, which just means that two things touch. Very fancy word for two things are touching. Well, so once I got that box and I've mirrored it, I can go ahead and click finish sketch here. Click on the home button again. Select both of these and extrude. And now instead of a number, I want them to go through the piece. So I don't care how big the piece is, as long as it's all going all the way through. So we're going to switch over to extent type here and turn that to all. Extent type, switch to all. And we're going to click the flip key because right now it wants to extrude up, but I want it to extrude down. So I'm going to click the flip key and it should automatically set the operation to cut here. And you'll see these guys going down and making red boxes through my piece. That just means that those are going to do some cutting. When I click OK, sure enough, the piece gets cut. And we have our completed box. So if you're in my class, if you're not just watching this because you found it on YouTube, if you're in my class, go ahead and click the home button and take a screenshot of this so that you can submit this to Canvas. I hope this video helped, and I'll see you in the next one.